employability package. This is the second of our 5 panels that you must attend in order to receive those 15 engineering PEP hours. I'd like to start this introduction off a little differently with a question that was submitted in one of the attendance forms. The individual asked, how do I connect with CEO and senior level executives from major companies? Well, the iBuild Our Future Mentoring Initiative is the answer. Today we have Chris Bulmer here to tell us more about the initiative, and he will also give us insight into his 35+ year career in the industry. So welcome, Chris.
Thanks, Livs. Hi, everyone.
If everyone could please turn on their camera to make Chris feel more welcome, that would be greatly appreciated. Quick introduction of Chris. He is the founder of the iBuild Our Future Mentoring Initiative and also the CEO of Greenwich Associates. But I'll leave that a bit brief so he can discuss his career later. So to start, I'm just going to share the SUCE events page for the program. So can everyone see that? Yes. Okay. So
yep.
This page is really important. I'm just going to pop it in the chat. It has all the information you need to know about the program, and also it has the application form at the bottom. So go down here, fill out the form, which will take you to this page. And then also really important as well is to click the Learn More, because this will take you to the handout. So this has extra information, Mentee Benefits, the application timeline, as well as the 40 mentors that are available for being paired with. So have a look at that in your own time. And I think we're good to hand over to Chris.
Wonderful. Good on you, Liv. Thank you. Well, look, good afternoon, everyone. It's great to be asked to speak to everyone today in regards to the iBuild Our Future Mentoring Initiative. It's an initiative we're very proud of, and I'm very much looking forward to telling you all about it this afternoon. Thanks, Liz. So just a bit of an overview to start with. The iBuild Our Future Mentoring Initiative was initially, I guess, thought of back in 2013, and it's the aim of being able to ultimately pair up CEOs and senior executives with students for a one-on-one mentoring process. Now, in that regards, I guess, one of the real points of difference that we have over other mentoring programs is just, quite frankly, the seniority of the senior executives themselves. And some of the benefits of this particular initiative, I'll cover off a little bit later in the talk this afternoon, and there'll also be plenty of opportunities for you guys to ask questions towards the end of the presentation as well. When we first started the program, though, excuse me, back in 2013, we started off small, and I guess that was one of the keys to make sure that it was ultimately a really successful initiative. We had eight senior executives involved in that first year, and in doing so, we actually were able to engage with senior executives in that small number, who we were all very sure were very committed to making, I guess, the initiative as good as it's now become. And in that first year, we worked pretty hard to try and get the mentoring model right, which is what I'll cover off this afternoon. The program, though, has now grown. So we've got this year, 2021, we'll have in excess of 65 mentors statewide. And we actually service all of the construction schools statewide. So that's the University of Newcastle to the north, Western Sydney, UNSW, and UTS. And this year we're very proud of the partnership with SUCE, where we're able to offer iBuild Our Future mentoring for the civil engineering students at the University of Sydney. So very appreciative of that opportunity. Thanks, Liz. A little bit of background on myself. So as it states there, I've been around a while. I started in the industry in 1985, pretty much before most of you were born. And in the 35 years, over the last 35 years, I've had a really interesting career path. I started off my career in being educated with a Bachelor of Applied Science in Building Services, and I'll talk a little bit more about that shortly as to what that meant in completing that course back in the 80s. But I also did a trade in carpentry and did later on in my career did some postgrad work with a grad diploma in land economy. So in many ways, I've had a fairly traditional career path, I guess, from a construction point of view. And I guess I'm able to talk about the industry in a pretty broad sense, in so much as I've been involved in the construction side of things, the design side of things, and certainly the engineering side of things, albeit I'm not an engineer by profession, so certainly don't hold that against me at all. But my career path, from an apprentice and a cadet, sort of running all the way through to ultimately some project management roles. It's probably worth just sort of picking on, I guess, when I first started looking for opportunities from a work point of view. So I enrolled in the as it says there, the Bachelor of Applied Science course, which was a 6-year part-time course at the start of '85. And in doing so, that particular year, there was not a lot of cadetships being offered. The building industry was in a pretty poor place. And I ended up writing 73 letters. I typed, every one of them were hand typed on my family's Olivetti typewriter. If anyone wants to know more about that, you'll need to Google some history. But, it was a process that I went through knowing how hard the industry was. And it was a process of days on end, typing out all of my applications, sending them all off, mailing them all off, snail mail, of course, and then ultimately getting what was only a very small handful of job offers out of those 73 applications. And I think if I hadn't have done that at the time, i.e. send out 73 applications, I probably would have ended up having to do labouring, which is in its own right, a good place to start your career. But I certainly wouldn't have had the opportunity of ultimately concurrently doing an apprenticeship and cadetship with a company called A.W. Edwards. And I think, if there's a lessons learnt for me from those early days, it's certainly, make sure that you work really hard to just get all of your applications out and really, really source, who are the organisations that you really want to work with out there. In the last 20 years, though, I've predominantly worked in a whole range of senior management roles. And in that regards, I'll talk a little bit more shortly just in regards to, what does it mean from a senior executive point of view? What is life like and the like. But I think one of the big decisions for me about 20 years ago was making that decision to be able to start to look at moving away from being a project manager and what was really comfortable from a technician's point of view. I felt 20 years ago I had enough, good building knowledge and the like, but I really wanted to test my mettle in regards to ultimately in a number of senior management roles. And as I said, I'll talk a little bit more about that and what it's like to work in that CEO type environment. Thanks, Liz. So just a little bit about Greenwich Associates, and this is really now, I guess, just providing a little bit of context of where I'm coming from and where we're coming from a business point of view and what that means from an iBuild perspective. So Greenwich Associates is a business that's been around for the last 8.5 years. It's a family owned and managed business, and certainly at the moment with COVID going on, it's a very tough environment to be able to continue to ensure that the business does well and the people in it are happy and doing well in their own rights. And I think one of the things that we're very proud of is the fact that, you know, we've worked hard to make sure that our beliefs, our goals, and what we think is right is all very much a part of how we operate that business. We are, I guess, quite a broad business to the extent that we're actually a group of 6 different companies. There are 3 professional services businesses in Greenwich Advisory, Greenwich Projects and Greenwich Planning. And equally, we have two businesses, Greenwich Build and Maru Build, both of which are construction businesses in the field. Maru being a 50-50 joint venture with an Indigenous business partner of mine. And then we also have a Greenwich Innovation, which is a company that focuses on the development of products for the building industry. And I guess in terms of what we're focusing on at the moment, we have a product called Alert Node, which is all about scaffold safety and making sure that we keep people safe and well and alive in being able to complete their work on scaffolds. So we are quite broad, and I guess again in a contextual sense, that really hopefully just gives you a little bit about myself and I guess where I'm coming from a Greenwich point of view. But one of the key ingredients for sort of why did we set the business up in the first place was there was, I guess we had a fundamental belief in being able to do better business, and that's casting no aspersion on the previous organisations that I've worked for in my career, but there was a real, I guess, aim to try and deliver a service which was really focusing on exceptional customer service and equally making sure that the business was founded on some very sound principles of giving back to try and create long-term and sustainable change in the industry. And ultimately, that's how Greenwich Inspire, our not-for-profit business, that's how ultimately it became responsible for the iBuild, our future mentoring initiative. So that's really where we are as of this afternoon, ladies and gents. Thanks. So the question that was levelled with me some weeks ago through SUCE, and it's a fantastic question, is, you know, what is it like to be a CEO? And I guess I've tried to summarise it there from the point of view that it's definitely the hardest job I've ever had to do in my life. Mainly from the point of view that it's a bit of everything in regards to what it provides and also what it expects as a role. And you know, to suggest that it's challenging is an understatement. In my 35 years, in all of the roles that I've had, I've never had a job though, you know, even as an apprentice carpenter and as a cadet, I've never had a job or I've never had a role which wasn't challenging. So I guess in that respect, I sort of see my role as a CEO as being most challenging, but it's equally they're challenges that I'm equipped for, given the level of experience and the people that I work with in the business who are there to be able to work with and get support from. It's pretty exciting. It's a job that, again, there's always something different. There's always something new. And I guess that supports this notion of, you know, the fact that it's a very challenging environment. And at the same time, it's exhausting. You know, it's very much a 24/7 role. I don't really understand how, you know, you can be a CEO and have a 40-hour-a-week job. And maybe this is perhaps an old school kind of thinking, but I certainly believe that, you know, to take the role seriously and do the job well, it's way more than 40 hours a week. And I certainly, you know, I certainly put in the hours. And I think from that perspective, you know, it's important to understand that there are other parts of your life that is actually affected by that, whether that be family or whether that be you know, your own sort of individual requirements and so on. It's certainly frustrating at times. I mean, the role, you know, on any given day, and particularly in COVID, it is a role that is exceptionally frustrating because it's very hard to plan and execute in a business sense at the moment, given the nature of how weird and wonderful the broader industry is at the moment. So it can be extremely frustrating, but at the same time, just so rewarding. And quite frankly, this iBuild initiative is one of the really rewarding parts of the role that I have at Greenwich Associates. In terms of, what does it mean to be a good CEO? I certainly think you need to be able to work with a wide range of people. And in that regards, you've got to be able to, I guess, have a very good understanding of your market and a very good understanding on, what the industry at large is doing. And that all comes with experience in your chosen field over a period of time. But the interesting thing is, I think that you don't necessarily, to be a good CEO, you don't necessarily need to be the world's greatest engineer, for argument's sake. I think you need to be a good technician in that discipline that you've chosen. But equally, I think you need to have a much broader range of skills beyond just being a good engineer. And I'll pick up a little bit more on that a little bit later this afternoon. The second last dot point, though, is just being able to read the signs, people, market cycles, the mood of a room. And the reason why this is important is because this is the intuitive side of the role, being able to use your intuition, being able to use your gut feel, certainly be able to back it up with, advice and information and being able to use that sort of information, but equally make those tough calls at times in regards to being able to read the signs that you need to be able to pick up on. And that last point there it's just so important. Just you've got to have heaps of guts and heaps of determination. You will get your lights punched down on many occasions in terms of you just need to be resilient. And if you're not fundamentally tenacious by nature, I'm not sure that people can become tenacious. I think you're either born with it or not. But certainly tenacity is a key part of being able to be a good CEO. The last 2 points there is I think, what does it mean to be a great CEO? I think the issue of having loads of humility is just so important. I don't stand before you today suggesting that I have loads of humility. I am saying that, what takes the very best CEOs, many of which are committed to iBuild, what does take them from good to great is that element of humility and equally the ability to be able to leave their ego at the door. And that last point, again, so important, because if you start making decisions based on what your ego thinks and what your ego feels, quite frankly, you and the business are doomed for failure in the fullness of time. Thanks, Livs. So just looking at sort of the voluntary service in industry, and really what are some of those tangible benefits. So I'm now taking sort of iBuild as an initiative, and then starting to look at, what does it mean from a voluntary service point of view? Because ultimately, that's how we start to test the iBuild model, which again I'll cover off shortly in regards to our 3 pillars. But some of the tangible benefits that I think you guys need to sort of consider, as to what can voluntary service in industry do for you. I mean, certainly being able to broaden your network and your contact base is just so important, whether you're 20 or whether you're 70, but that is such a key to being able to make sure that you can continue to leverage off that network in a broader business sense. And equally being able to learn about sort of a broader cross-section of community or industry or education. And I guess that's really making sure that you try and throw yourself into, areas of industry that you might not otherwise work in or be in. And I think being able to expose yourself to other parts of or other cross-sections of the marketplace is really important. I'll give you some examples of that shortly. And then equally being able to potentially move into alternate career paths beyond your chosen career. You know, you've made decisions over the last few years to start your respective careers in civil engineering in a particular discipline. And I think being able to work and provide voluntary service in industry is something that will potentially give you a much greater understanding of what else is out there, where you might end up moving from one particular civil engineering discipline to perhaps another one in the fullness of your time, a little bit further down in your career. And that really underpins this sort of notion of, you know, it's an opportunity for growth, self-growth, personal growth, professional growth. These are all aspects of being able to provide voluntary service in industry. In the last sort of coming up to probably 20, 22 years, you know, I've worked for in providing not-for-profit organisations such as the AIB, the New South Wales Property Council, the MBA. I spent a number of years with the Construction Forecasting Council, and in more recent times, I was provided with the opportunity with the group at the Institute of Quality Construction to actually establish a brand new not-for-profit organisation, which now has many of Australia's tier 1 and tier 2 contractors to it. And that, as I said, is a voluntary role that I undertake and have done for the last 2 years. In terms of sort of how to be active, certainly, you know, becoming active student members with the Institution of Civil Engineers, so ICE, Engineers Australia, and other professional member organisations. These are all great opportunities for you guys to be able to get involved from a voluntary service in industry perspective. Thanks, Liz. And then equally from a, just come back one, please, Liz. One more, please, Liz. One more, please, Liz. Sorry. Okay, thank you. So just the same thing applies to voluntary service in education. This is where, again, there's a number of benefits that can be attained out of providing service to within the educational environment, and being able to work with, whether it's SUCE or one of the other student associations, and provide service in kind for that particular association. It's all about being able to then build relationships across a much broader group of students beyond perhaps just your immediate peer group that you study with now. And these sorts of opportunities will give you skills to manage and ultimately lead various initiatives, you know, and develop those leadership responsibilities and leadership abilities, because the notion of being able to, you know, ultimately plan and project manage and deliver a tangible outcomes in a voluntary sense in education, it's very, very hard to do. And if you've never been involved with it, many of you who have not been involved with it don't quite understand how difficult it is to ultimately juggle multiple responsibilities between your family life, your university life from an academic point of view, social, friends, and so on, and the responsibilities that you have to a voluntary organisation that you might get involved with at uni. I mean, I've been involved with a number of different voluntary roles in education. So the industry advisory boards that I'm still on with UTS, and also previously with Western Sydney University. The industry reference group with TAFE was a really important one in the development of some of the Cert 4 courses some years ago. And my current role as adjunct professor at UTS in the Faculty of Design, Architecture, Building is a very important part of how I give back from a voluntary education point of view, given that that's an honorary role. And then equally, you know, professional memberships that I would urge all of you to consider in terms of, you know, the Institute of Managers and Leaders. I'm a fellow there, likewise with the AIB, I'm also a member with the Australian Institute of Quantity Surveying and the Australian Institute of Project Management. And I know they're always seeking out student members, which would be great for you guys to get involved with. Thanks, Livs. So our unique value proposition, and a little bit now, just focusing now on iBuild, our future mentoring. You know, the mentors, they're all that are committed to the initiative. They all want to be able to help grow the future generation of industry executives and industry engineers. And all of the CEOs and senior executives, they're all successful leaders in their own right. They're all respected, and they're very well regarded in their chosen fields. You know, through the mentoring initiative, you'll find that each senior executive, you know, will be more than keen to be able to tell you their story of what they've achieved in their career path. Many of them will talk about their successes, they'll talk about their failures, and they'll give you some perspective on what it's like to succeed and what it's like to fail. And the thing that I've talked to all of them about is, you know, ultimately defining for you guys, you know, what is their expectation of what is required of young people in industry in 2021 and beyond. So it's a good opportunity then to be able to get their career and guidance as to how to best use your talents, because we're all built differently, and the senior execs involved with the iBuild initiative, they're all very switched on, and they'll get to know you guys very well through your one-on-one sessions following the application process. They've all got great insight into the industry at large, and they've also got great insight into, you know, the particular discipline that you're currently studying at the moment. And more than anything, they see it as a great opportunity to impart wisdom and really try and firm up what does it mean to provide great service to our wonderful industry. Thanks, Liz. So the next slide then just covers now a little bit more on the initiative itself. And in that regards, you know, and as I've said, it's about connecting students with industry CEOs and senior executives. And the key thing is this is a one-on-one session with a mentor for an hour or so. Given COVID, where it's all being done by Zoom or Teams this year, the way we've got the initiative set up for the University of Sydney civil engineering students is that we've identified 40 executives from all streams of the civil engineering course that you guys are currently studying. So geotech, enviro, humanitarian, construction, structural, transport, infrastructure, and indeed project management. And you can see there, I won't labour through the list, but there's some wonderful businesses that are represented there. There's some of Australia's brightest, smartest, and quite frankly, most wonderful CEOs and senior execs have committed their time. They all do this free. It's a service in kind initiative that they provide to us year in, year out. And again, there's some of Australia's most fantastic companies that are represented there as part of the initiative this year. Thanks, Liv. So the application timeline, I mean, we opened for applications this morning at 9 a.m. And the applications close on September 1st at 9 p.m. It's a hard finish, so we treat the process as you would a tender submission in industry. So unfortunately we're not in a position to be able to accept applications after the close, because we want to make sure that we obviously then move into assessing all of the applications that come in, and make sure that we can then work through the pairings process, so that then students can be ultimately paired up with their mentors in late September through to October this year. Thanks, Liz. Some of the benefits are worth just briefly talking about. So for the 40 successful students part of the process that we'll be implementing is a HR orientation meeting where we'll have a number of HR professionals from industry, and they will be involved in being able to work with the group to ensure that you are trained in how to best present yourself ultimately to a senior executive. SUCE already have some really good initiatives in regards to CV writing and so on, so we will dovetail into that process. And then ultimately, what we want to try and do is make sure that you have got some clear instructions on how to present yourself to the CEO, how to talk, and be able to ensure that you exhibit the best possible qualities of yourself to that CEO. Noting that whilst we don't try and this isn't a process of getting people work or getting people jobs, quite the opposite. But certainly over the years, we've had a number of examples where CEOs have been so impressed with their mentees out of this initiative that has subsequently led on to both internships, cadetships, and also full-time employment. So it's a good opportunity to be able to learn from an experienced senior leader and ultimately gain the advice as to how to best position yourself for future advancement. Thanks, Livs. So who should apply? Look, obviously, it's as I've said, it's for students doing civil engineering at the University of Sydney. Ultimately, I suspect we will be oversubscribed with applications, which I would say, if you don't get paired up this year, you're most welcome to apply again next year, as we will certainly be running this program again next year. So what we will do is give preference to students in their final years of study, mainly so that we can service those students to the best of our ability, and then hopefully, if there are enough placements for early year undergrads, well, then we'd like to be able to include them in the initiative as well this year. There are 3 pillars that I've mentioned to you previously: community, industry, and education. I'm going to talk more about them in a moment, but they ultimately are the cornerstones that we will be judging all of the applications on. And what we would ask in your respective application is to certainly also nominate your preferred area or discipline of engineering, so that we can ensure that is all considered as part of the pairing process. Let's leave. So, as I said, we're looking for students that can give us a really good response into how they operate in community, industry, and education. And ultimately, what we're looking for is people who are and students who are genuinely decent people. We're looking for the students who have the X factor. We want to put the very best of the University of Sydney and their civil engineering undergrads in front of the senior executives that we've got involved in this process. And as a part of that, what the CEOs are expecting is that we do deliver decent people. We do deliver students who do have that X factor. Thanks, Liz. So in terms of community, I'm looking for, we're looking for your commitment to community or volunteering experience. And this is all about being able to, show us how you care, show us what you give back, show us how you get involved in various volunteering. And being able to expand on that in the application will be fantastic. And that's some examples there. It might be a not-for-profit organisation like the Red Cross or the Lions or one of any other not-for-profit organisations. Or equally, it could be closer to home in terms of some of you are, I'm certainly aware have done NGO mentoring for argument's sake. And certainly that is also another great way to be able to demonstrate your commitment to community. Thanks, Lou. And then from an industry point of view, in terms of, some examples there, I've mentioned ICE, Engineering Australia student membership. and again, this is really about, I guess, ultimately you setting up your career in regards to, you know, a commitment to industry beyond just working in the industry, beyond just servicing the industry. And in particular, what we're looking for here is, you know, not just perhaps student membership, but if you've got active involvement in any of these sorts of student membership organisations, please tell us about it in your application. And then from an education point of view, this isn't what it's not about. We're not looking for the students that have got 100% in all of their coursework this year. We are looking for the activities throughout the university's environment, particularly in regards to societies, and ultimately, you know, how have you been able to positively influence your educational experience and the educational experience of other students at the University of Sydney. So the pairing process itself, so this is all done outside of SUCE, and it's done outside of SUCE because within the work that we do on the CEO, senior executive side of things, we've obviously been able to assess each CEO and senior executive for what they can bring to a student, and equally being able to then ensure that the pairing makes sense in regards to the disciplines and interests that you guys have, as demonstrated through your criteria. And then in terms of how we will assess each application, again, it's about your response to the criteria of community, industry, and education, and what does that look like and mean for you guys. And then equally, as I said, being able to then look at pairing applicability in regards to the student discipline, as I said, and also being able to look at the respective disciplines of the senior executives. We want to give them, again, a great experience out of this process. So therefore, ensuring that a senior geotechnical principal, for argument's sake, has the opportunity to meet with a geotechnical student makes sense both from the student mentee's perspective, and also from the senior executive mentor's perspective. So how the process works then, I mean, each senior executive will be advised of their mentee, and they will be provided with not only a copy of your CV and also the application, but they will also then be advised of the date that the mentoring session is on, and we will coordinate that both for the mentee and the mentor. And I guess one of the points to make there is, quite frankly, you know, these senior executives, they are all time poor. They are all committing their time. So if you could please just keep that in the back of your mind, because we want to make sure that we give them the courtesy of you guys being there on time and frankly getting the full benefit of the hour or so that they give you. After the mentoring is completed, one of the things that we would ask of all 40 mentees and all 40 mentors is we'll ask you for some feedback and any suggestions in regards to ongoing development of the initiative. So the application itself is, I think given the time, Liv, we might actually sort of move past that unless you'd like to click on that now, but certainly it's worth having a look at the application. I've covered off the application in regards to what's expected, but we might sort of move past that at this point, Livs, and allow the students to go back to that when they're ready. Please connect with us. Please give us feedback. Please let us know the quality of the process, the quality of you know, the pairings, and certainly if you are accepted through the application process, you know, make sure that you let us know how that goes, and please connect with us through any of those forums, because your feedback is vitally important to the success of this initiative going forward, and we want to make sure that we continue to evolve it as we have since 2013. So it's worth, I think, Liv's just going through any questions that anyone may have of the initiative.
Yep. So I'll just get the notes up. So if anyone has any questions, please pop them in the chat. Otherwise, read off the questions from the attendance forms. So just an initial question to start off. The first section of Q&A will be about the industry and his career, and then the second section will be about iBuild. So the first question, would you say that technical skills are of more value or equally as important as general transferable skills?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think you need both. Certainly, if you think about the role that you have as a young engineer, as opposed to the role that you may have in a more of a senior management role in the future, both of them require different sets of skills. And I think having that nice blend of IQ and EQ at all stages of your career, I think is really important. Because ultimately, as your career progresses, it will change in regards to what is more important at that point in time. But I would generally say that for your whole career, yeah, both technical skills as well as general transferable skills are equally as important.
So from a CEO perspective, would you say you use more technical or more general?
I think in a senior management role, I think it's definitely less technical. So
yeah,
you're so much more reliant on skills in terms of people management and communication and being able to convey proper messaging and so on, than you are of being again a great technician from an engineering perspective.
Yeah, for sure. The next sort of statement someone asked was, I would like to hear how the industry has changed over the years.
That's a good question. So I guess given I've been around a while, I've certainly seen lots of changes. I mean, technology is probably the main one that comes to mind. I know when I first started, there was no computers. We literally, everything was snail mailed. So the use of technology in that very basic sense has obviously changed significantly, but equally how that technology is applied to both the market and the industry now and in the future, it's a real game changer. But equally, I think there's other key things that have changed, and people often talk about technology, Liv, but they maybe don't recognise that the commercial landscape has changed significantly. The industry is much more litigious now than it ever was previously. I know when I first started, construction law was an embryonic part of the legal fraternity. Now construction lawyers are very prominent and very well paid and have lots of work. So unfortunately, we're in a much more of a litigious industry now. And I think the other aspect that's changed is the way that we actually deal with people now. I think there's a greater level of care that goes into managing people in a team, and I sort of reflect on, and I won't talk about this afternoon given time, but some of the pretty terrible scenarios that I went through as an apprentice and as a cadet, with expectations then of how you were treated and the like. It was, it's very different in the last. It's changed very much so in the last 35 years.
Probably for the better in that aspect.
Yeah, absolutely.
Next question is, what kind of behaviours / impressions make someone stand out in the industry?
Yeah, that's another good one. I think that you'll often hear people say, just be true to yourself, and I think it's a bit of a soft statement, but it's a really truthful statement. And I think if you try and be something that you're not, then ultimately you're gonna come a cropper. And I think being able to be that, that the best that you can be and be true to yourself, I think that's probably the thing that most senior executives and senior management is looking for in terms of young undergrads and young graduates, because they want to know that ultimately that they are bringing people on who can relate well to not only the business but the other people that are in the business as a result of them being just truthful in regards to who they are as individuals. So I think this notion of just be who you are and be true to yourself would be my key response to that question, Liv.
Perfect response. And then just as a bit of a follow-up, how should an employee make moves which increases their chances of moving into management positions? So more like behaviours from a management perspective.
Yeah, I think grab opportunities. Grab opportunities where you are put outside your comfort zone. I mean, I know when I was in my mid-20s, I wasn't very good at presenting. And so one of the things that I did was I went and got a job at TAFE as a tutor at night time, and ultimately did TAFE teaching some years later. And that gave me the skills that I needed to learn how to present in front of a group. And those skills were then transferable back to my job, my day job. And I think, having the guts just to get out of your comfort zone and go and do stuff in a workplace that ultimately will have you be seen amongst a large group of engineering graduates, because I think senior executives and senior managers are always looking for those individuals with that X factor, and they will recognise when you're doing something outside of your comfort zone as something that, as something of you having guts and determination. And again, they're recognisable attributes, Liv.
Yeah, of course. I'm just going to send the application form for mentoring in the chat for those who wanted it. So the next question, what do you think your most important lesson was that you took from university?
That's a really good question too. So I mean, when I mentioned earlier that I did the 6-year part-time building degree and I went through UTS. I distinctly remember in that course feeling, again, as with it being 6 years, it's a long time to study, particularly when you're working essentially full time. So I was at uni 1 day a week, 2 nights, and then I was working 5 days a week, inclusive of the Saturday. So work dominated, what I did during my university years, and I always felt though that at university there were always people who I felt were academically better than me, and that certainly proved up in the fullness of time with a number of my friends, getting honours and so on. But I think the thing I learned most out of my uni years was ultimately backing my own intuition and trying to learn that generally my intuition was right. And that's not to say that I was always right, but I think over the years when I haven't backed my intuition, there've been the times when I've invariably been wrong. So at uni, it's probably just trying to see myself in the big picture here of, as you guys are, you're there with lots of undergrads, they're all competition, and you want to be able to try and sort of find those little aspects of yourself of what is that quintessential aspects of that is Chris Bulmer relative to other people in the industry. So yeah, it was probably just, as I said, just learning to back myself to the best of my ability.
Yeah, and that also relates back to the iBuild requirements, how you won't be choosing based off anyone's academic performance, but rather if they're a good person or not.
That's exactly right.
Yeah. So just moving on to the iBuild questions now.
Sure.
This question was also in the chat. What is the best year for a person to get a mentor? For example, should it be first years or third years? And third years they've said, should it be third years when you have more of an idea about where you're headed?
Yeah, look, I think in, and this is a massive generalisation. I think in first and second year, you're still trying to very much find your way. And I guess from a value perspective, if I'm being honest, the best value to offer a mentee and a CEO type mentor, looking at it also from their point of view, is probably somebody from third and fourth year, because it gives the CEO the opportunity to, I guess, provide people who they know are in effect going to be in the industry very soon, or indeed may well be in the industry already from an internship point of view. So whilst we are more than happy to seek applications from all years through the civil engineering course, yeah, we will tend to give preferential treatment, just because there's arguably a little bit more value that can be delivered through the mentoring initiative, Liv.
Yeah, for sure. But that's not saying first and second years can't apply, because the same application form will be used for next year as well. So you can just like copy and paste and reapply if you don't get in next year. This year, sorry.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So next question. If I do not have any networks, how can I find my way to work in the civil engineering field?
I'd implore any of you to think through the pillars of iBuild, because the best way to build a network is to get involved in any or all of those three areas. And and as I went through tonight, Liv, the opportunity in community, in industry, and in education is in my mind the penultimate way to build a network. And what I'd also say is, even if you don't think that this year you've got a good enough application to put to us, I would suggest have a go anyway. But equally, in answer to this question, use iBuild as an opportunity to try and grow your network by way of getting involved in any or all of those three pillars. And at least in your application further on, will put you into a stronger position. But equally, it means that you'll be able to grow your network accordingly. Yeah,
of course. And University of Sydney's always going on about how important networking is. So jump on this opportunity. So the next question is, what strategies do you have to balance industry, academic, and community activities?
Wow, that's a good question. That's a really great question. I think part of it is sort of reflecting on. So let me think about this. So the strategies of sort of balancing those three pillars, I think it comes down to what's most relevant for you at any given time in your career. So I think trying to think about, at university, for example, maybe, and this is a question for each individual, maybe getting more involved in the academic environment in an educational sense. Perhaps that is more important while you're at university. But equally, when you get into industry as a graduate, perhaps your involvement in more industry-based associations is perhaps more relevant at that point in time. I guess the way I've sort of done it, I guess it took me a while to get to the point in my career of sort of understanding the relevance and the opportunity for each of those three pillars. And so for me, all three kind of morphed probably in my late 20s, early 30s, where it just became pretty evident to me that I needed to kind of do a little bit in each. But I think they will morph naturally so at different stages of your career. And I sort of think, the stuff I get involved with now is definitely more focused in education, because I believe that's where I can deliver most value. So the acid test for each individual is at each point in your career is just to reflect of, you know, what is the maximum value that I can deliver in each of these respective pillars, and that ultimately is the decision-making process in terms of, you know, what is more important at any point in your career.
Yeah.
Great question, Liv, that one.
Shout outs to Rohan, I think it was, from the attendance forms. So second
Very good.
last question. As a mentee, what kind of things can we do to get the most out of the program?
I would make, okay, so a couple of suggestions.
Well, it appears our interviewee has dropped out. There he is. Dad, you're just on mute.
Right, so my apologies. I was pretty scared, and I was actually running away from that last question, Liv. Could you ask the question again, please, Liv?
As a mentee, what kind of things can we do to get the most out of the program?
Yeah, so Google everything you can about your mentor. Make sure that you investigate and have a thorough understanding of who you're talking to. That is a really good tip for not only this mentoring initiative, but any part of the work that you do going forward. Always try and understand who the audience is and understand, you know, as much as you can about the individual that you're meeting. Prepare yourself well with regards to the HR work that we'll do with each of the mentees, because we will have, as I said earlier, professional HR people who will tell us all the way that we need to conduct ourselves and behave in that mentor session. So yeah, listen to that really good advice that'll come through that part of the process as well, Liv.
Sounds good. And just as a final wrap-up question, what is the most important piece of advice for people interested in the mentoring program?
If there's one takeaway from this, given the quality of the CEOs and senior executives involved in this initiative, and most of these people, many of these people I've known for a long time, and I've seen them in their own right come through their own respective career paths, and they're all there giving back. And I guess if there's one little aspect that would be lovely for each of the mentees to learn, it's just, you know, how important it is to give back, and what it means to give back, and what is the value of service in kind. And you know, if that's what you can get out, if that's what you can take away from the meeting with your mentor, I'd be so delighted with that outcome, Liv.
Yeah, for sure. So I'm just going to pop the website page, the SUCE website page, back in the chat for those who missed it. Also, go follow the iBuild Our Future LinkedIn page, because there's going to be regular posts. I guess it's photo time. Can everyone please turn on their camera and smile nicely? Okay. Second page is popping their cameras on. Okay, perfect. Thanks, everyone. So next week, SUCE has their trivia on Wednesday from 5:30. So make sure